Good morning. My name is Jason Coyle, Operations Section Chief for Southwest Area Team 1. Today is Friday, May 27th, and this is your operational update for the north zone of the Calf Canyon Hermits Peak fires. Last night's IR mapped the fire at 312,230 acres, 47% containment, and there's 3,009 personnel assigned to the incident. So before I go on, I said north zone, and we are the north zone. So everything that was the west zone and everything that was the east zone is now the north zone. And we're in charge of managing that portion of the fire. And that's primarily the portion that I'll be speaking to today. So before we get to the map, the Memorial Day weekend is coming up, and there's some things that we worry about with Memorial Day weekend, and there's also some folks that I wanted to give a shout out to. So for every one of the 3,009 people on this fire, there's people back home that are taking care of problems day in and day out while we're out here. Our spouses, our loved ones, kids that miss their dad, kids that miss their mom, and things that the folks that are here are missing back home. And while we have certainly commiserated over the soccer games and the graduations, everything that's been missed, I wanted to recognize on behalf of all my peers, the people like my wife Christy that are taking care of problems at home all by themselves, and we're out here doing this work, and we know it's hard. And we're thankful for all the support you provide us, and I know that we couldn't do it without that support. So with that, the other thing about Memorial Day weekend is that there's going to be a lot more people around, right? And the problem and the solutions that I'm going to present to you as I go around the map, they're dependent upon a static environment. And if there's more fire starts that pull away aircraft, that cause us to need to commit resources somewhere else to prevent those fires from getting large, it limits our ability to be successful on this incident. So everybody has a role in that, whether it's checking to make sure that your chains are zip tied up before you pull your trailer out onto the highway, whether it's checking the air pressure in that trailer or your truck to make sure that you don't pop a tire and then send sparks of metal flying off the road. Whether it's wondering if, hey, my car hasn't been running right, but it's probably fine, and then your catalytic converter's spitting little pieces of hot metal out on the side of the road and causing more fires, or getting rid of that cigarette, or just doing something you shouldn't with fireworks or whatever out in the woods. So we just ask for your help, because the last thing we need right now is another ignition. All right, so with that, I'm going to talk about the areas that we're patrolling, and then I'll go to the map, because I want to make sure everybody knows that we haven't lost sight of the importance of making sure that we finish strong, especially when it comes to the east zone and the areas that have had limited fire activity, because we know that the conditions that we're going to be presented with over the next 4 days are conditions that will promote large fire growth, and that there's areas where we've had heat that may not have been visible or even visible by infrared underneath the previous conditions that all of a sudden could pop up, and we want to get those while they're small. So we'll be continuing to patrol along the 434 road, Guadalupita, Sierra Bonita, south from Black Lake there, across the 120 in the Hidden Lakes area. We'll have less of a presence because of its proximity to the fire, but rest assured that all of the work that was done around all those communities, around the Hidden Lakes community and along the highway, that preparatory work, those lines, we know where they are, and we're ready to use them if we need to. Also, down the 94 road, Ladue, and then South Carmen, it will still have a presence in that area. Matter of fact, yesterday we got a smoke report, and resources down there making sure that smoke was coming from someplace well interior. And then, of course, along the 518 road, there's Mora, Cleveland, Holman, Chacon, Angostura, Tres Ritos, Los Mochis, and then the Sipapu Ski Resort. We'll have a presence in all those areas. So everything within that whole north zone is going to have firefighters patrolling, and then we'll be responding to the calls if there's any smoke reports. And you're going to see smoke today. The other thing the other reason you're going to see smoke today is because of activity that's off of our map to the south there in the wilderness. And that is also part of the situation that we're keeping an eye on, and just making sure that our planning and stuff is, let me say it this way, I'm paid to be pessimistic. If I'm like, oh, don't worry, that could never happen, that nobody pays me for that. So we'll deal with the enclosed problems, and then we're also going to look at the faraway problems. It was like Beowulf, right? It's not the thing you fear, it's the mother of the thing you fear. So we want to watch out for the mother of the thing we fear. Anyways, to the map. So we'll start over here with everything in the 434 corridor. It's looking really good, with no threats to the line, but we will continue to patrol that. And we're making sure that we're mapping all of the dozer line and any other suppression damage that was done, so that we can be ready to engage in suppression repair, which will probably start once we're done with this wind event. And I'll talk more about what that is tomorrow or tonight. Down in Mora, all the way up the 518 corridor. The only place that we saw activity yesterday was right here in the last place that burned out there, that what we're calling the horseshoe, that no longer looks like a horseshoe. That's just north of Holman, where the 518 splits off. And then there was some heat coming off of here too. I guess I should have said the 121 road, since the 518 goes that way when I was talking about that we were up in Chacon. But we are going to be patrolling up in this area as well. And we'll be keeping an eye on this area on the north, where we got that hand line put in several days ago. But last night on IR, this was looking really good. Hardly any heat in there. Going all the way down south of Cerro Picacho. Everything down to right here is looking really good. And we're actually going to have crews. I keep saying looking really good, which isn't a very descriptive term. So there's nowhere in there that we see a threat to the line of fire crossing the line, because the fire is either out along the fire's edge. Well, that's it, that the fire's out along the fire's edge. So that's what looking really good means. I know that's not a very good way to say it. So anyways, going down south to the 518 road, this area right here where the dozer line's out here and the fire's edge is in here, we're going to put crews in here again today. And we're going to make sure that edge is secure, make doubly sure, I guess I should say, because we've already been over it a few times. And that's just because we don't like it when there's unburned fuel between our lines and the fire's edge. But because of the steepness of this terrain, there's no good way to deal with that. And we want the line down here because if something rolls out, we want to be able to catch it. So the best thing we can do is make sure that we're going in there and checking it again. Fortunately, the west-southwest winds, if anything was to get active in here, it's likely that it would spot just right into, back into the old burn scar. But we don't want any more fire on the landscape, so we're going to do our best to make sure that doesn't happen. Going across the top of Division Mike, crews are going to make another pass back this way across there to make sure that to look for more heat. Not to make sure, but to look for more heat. And it is, there is much fewer, there's fewer IR signatures along this whole entire edge each day over the last 3 days, significantly fewer. And there's also significantly fewer around this edge, going down to about right here. And then around the spot, there's some there's two that were visible on the northeast side. There's actually one that was a little bit outside of what this spot perimeter is. And we've already given those to air attack, and they're going to be flying in there, and crews are going to be going in there to look at those. So these are points of heat. This can be a campfire. It's not a campfire, but I mean, it's just that much heat. So we're to the point on this section of line that we're getting the coordinates for each one of those pieces of heat from the night before, and we're going out to look for them if they're near the line, or and especially if they're outside the line, and immediately get on them, because this is the area that I have the most concern about for it spotting over and creating impacts downstream. And so we're going to continue to focus heavily in that. And we're also going to keep an eye on everything down here south of the Serpent Lake Trail and our activity down to where our zone break is down here by Enchanted Lake. Up here in this area, so we don't anticipate to see any fire growth here based on the amount of heat. And we also don't anticipate to see any more fire growth south of the Serpent Lake Trail. So you could say that the assumption I'm making is that this fire is not going to present a threat underneath the wind conditions that we have. But we're going to validate that assumption daily, because as we take care of the big pieces and the ones that are the most proximal threat to the values, to the communities and the cultural values and the acequias, the watersheds, then we start looking further out and we start really drilling down, because it only takes one spot. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that we recognize that as well, and we're going to continue to look for that one spot that could be causing the problem. All right, leaving the fire's edge, going back around this indirect control line, we call it. Since if it's on the fire's edge, it's direct. If it's off away, it's indirect. Should be tied into the rock that's south of Ripley Point later today. And last night they did get the other end of this tied all the way in to the 518 over there by the monastery. The 518 road has been prepped and will be the control line in this area, the indirect line, and then they're continuing to work on this line. They got past Gallegos Peak, and they're up here somewhere around Serra de Osa, working to get that line all the way through the Sardinas fire scar, across Serra Ola, and then up through the Luna fire scar and up here to where it would tie in with the other line. That line's also being worked from the north to the south in the same direction. And again, I talked about it yesterday, but fire gets across here in 5 days. It's anticipated to be right here. We need to have enough time to hold whatever line we have. So putting a line in here that through a wind event where you can't fly, or they say that's our backup line, that would be foolish. So that's why our backup line is up there. And then the other line that we're putting in, the work is continuing all the way across the north. And this one was done first because it is in the most advantageous location. And this one can be completed. Work will continue on both of these lines until such time that this fire no longer presents a threat. And then that's not just the threat that we talked about in here, but that's also taking into consideration the fire activity in the wilderness, the large areas of unburned fuel that are between where that fire activity is, and places like the Dome and Trampas Peak, and then going back over the top of the few little areas of fuel that get across this ridge system from North Truchas all the way around to Jicarita. So because we know that there's those avenues, because we know that there's still a month of fire season left, a month plus, 6 weeks of fire season left in the Southwest, we're not going to lose sight of any of that. And all of this work is going to continue. And we're going to look for other places we need to do work and make sure that we have a plan that prevents damage to the values under any of the conditions that are being anticipated. So with that, it's the end of the operational report. Thank you.